This is a big part of my story that I really struggled, especially in my preteen, teen years with my body and with food. The plus size modeling industry was a major part of my healing, of my self-worth, and which led me to self-care. I started cooking out of my apartment in New York and delivering it around the city. We eventually grew that company to over $10 million. But one day after the next, as I stayed accountable to shifting my mindset and exercising my mindset and my mental health in the same way I might exercise my physical body every day, I watched my life transform. The foundational belief of Self-Care Society is that a great life is really just a series of great days. So we help you create a great day. If you want to make more money and you want to be more successful, then you sure as hell need to implement self-care. And I always say self-care doesn't take time, it makes time.
Hello and welcome to The Making of. Danika Brysha, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I am so excited to have you. Your energy and warmth exudes through the screen, and I've gotten to have you on previous Circle Summits and I've watched your content. And so to interview you today and just have this discussion is so exciting.
Well, thank you. We're big Circle fans and you've just been so lovely. So it's going to be a great conversation.
Awesome. So, okay, let's start here. I know a lot of your story and we'll get into that, but I want to know about young Danika. What was she like? What was she into? What was she curious about?
Yeah. So I think about this a lot because so much of the work that I lead is around helping people kind of, understand their purpose and their passion and what lights them up and what's authentic to them. And so, I think about this a lot. And I was very, it's funny. I can look back at my hobbies. I was always building things. I was Connects and Legos and always building things, which I look forward and I'm I'm building companies all the time. I always was loving to build things. And then I was always putting myself on camera. My dad worked in cameras. So we had the big VHS, the video recorders and all of that. And so he worked for a Olympic camera. So we have a lot of the camera stuff around. So I was always making videos, I was always putting myself on camera. And it's funny because a lot of that, today, is being on camera. And then from an emotional kind of personality standpoint, I was always the kid who I was very empathetic at a young age, but or insensitive, but didn't really know how to put words to that. And so I was very aware of how everyone was feeling. So I was always the kid who made sure no one got left out, right? Or they would always put they would always kind of put some of the more special needs kids in my class because I would make sure that they were included. And I can't have a birthday party without inviting every single person, right? And so I think that's how that played out as a kid. It was just be almost, reading the room, but as a little kid and just making sure how's everyone doing here? Am I making kind of space in a way less conscious way? And I think that's kind of weaves into my work today. And then, kind of growing up, I was kind of the chubby, class clown, over the top, kind of funny one as I sort of tried to figure out who I was and, understand my own self-worth. So, the evolving identities.
Yes. It sounds like you had such a high emotional intelligence as a child, to see the gaps in the room and see who might be being left out. And just it sounds like you had the ability to put yourself in other people's shoes. And where did that come from? Do you know? Was that always innate to you, or was it from an experience that you had as an individual?
I think it was probably both. I really struggled, and this is a big part of my story, that I really struggled, especially in my preteen, teen years with my body and with food, being kind of a bigger girl. And, that eventually was dieting when I was really little and developed eating disorder. I was severely bulimic. Then I had really dealt with binge eating disorder, drugs, alcohol, literally everything. And so much of it being connected to my self-worth. And I think, for a long time, I just never felt like I, was enough as I was. I was always in this pursuit of, especially weight loss, right? Of if I could just lose the weight, I would be enough. Or, maybe the guys would like me. They like my other friends who can shop at Limited too, and I have to shop at adult stores, right? So it was just I think I naturally had that compassion for myself. and the ways that that maybe was feeling like not part of, I think I was always part of a community. I was always relative, like, kind of a popular kid, but it was because I was kind. And I think a lot of that, like over the top kindness and inclusivity came from my own self-protective mechanisms to make sure that I didn't get hurt. If that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. Like a lot of times we put out what we want to receive. And like, we speak to people and we connect with people in ways that we want to be connected with. So it's beautiful to see how you've taken something that was rooted in a lot of your own self-growth and hurt and healing, and have manifested that in a way where you're really a connector, a community builder, and you make people feel so loved and so seen. And it's like a testament to your warmth as well.
Oh,
and that it comes from, a place that you have had to work at. Right. And I think that a lot of times when, as a founder, as an entrepreneur, we sometimes can take people at face value and say, like, this is just who Danika's always been. And we don't always see the work behind it. So really quick, I want to go into like you becoming a model. So you've set the stage for preteen you, teenager you. What got you into modeling, and that relationship between how you were perceived physically to then being a model who, your whole job is to be seen physically?
Yeah. So I'm a big believer in manifestation and mindset and all that. And so I decided probably when I was like 13 or 14 that as I was on this journey of trying to figure out, my own worth, I decided, well, if I could be a model, then I would be happy, like that's the ultimate goal, because especially at that time, and, I guess that was like in the 2000s, that's what we saw, right? We saw the stick thin runway models, and, social media wasn't quite there. So we were subjected to whatever was actually on TV and in our media. And so I decided, okay, if I could just be a model. And I had so many people, I got this sort of backhanded compliment a lot that was, you have such a pretty face. And it just always essentially meant like, but what about the rest of you? You know what I mean? And I think there's many women who could probably relate to that and have heard that before. You have such a pretty face. And so it always felt like I am so close to being enough if I could just lose the weight, and I was like about a size 12, 14. I'm 5'10". Anyway, so I really manifested and I worked really hard to try and lose weight so I could be a model for so long. And finally, when I had just kind of had enough, like I hit a point, and this was after college, I was living in LA, and I hit a point where I was working as a production assistant on the show True Blood. I was like, and so I was in the industry and whatever, but I still always had this dream of like being discovered as a model, because I still felt like, okay, that's going to make me feel worthy. I was still struggling with that. Anyway, I think that we manifest things that we want really badly, but not necessarily in the way that we think we will. And so oddly enough, I had sort of gotten to this point where I was so exhausted from I look back, I was like, I had spent the last 10, 15 years putting so much energy towards weight loss and food control and all of this. And what if I put that energy into like literally anything else? I could be unstuck, right? And now I can say today that I do that in my businesses and that stuff. And I feel that way. And so I sort of let myself settle, and I was a size 5'10". As I said, I was size 14. I sort of let myself settle. And I was randomly at the Bank of America, I don't know, just like at the ATM. And these modeling agents came up to me and they asked me if I ever thought about being a plus size model. And they were like, you're the perfect size. Like, we want you exactly as you are. We think you do really well in the industry. It's like very up and coming. And I was like, okay. And so I signed with them and started
really
modeling.
Really quick. You're at the ATM.
Yeah.
You're just at the end.
Which is kind of like a metaphor, because it made me a lot of money after that.
I love that. So you're at the ATM, you get approached.
Yeah.
Really quick, what was going through your head? Like when they said, we want you to stay exactly as you are, like we want you as is, after having felt like you needed to change in order to get what you wanted. And for them in that conversation to be like, you're perfect right now. We want you right now. What was going through your head at that moment?
It's hard to remember back then, but what I will say is that the plus size modeling industry was a major part of my healing, of my self-worth, and which led me to self-care, which I'm sure we'll talk about because that's the foundation of what I do now. Because we take care of the things that we value, right? And so in order for me to even get to a space of self-care, which is the foundation of a lot of what I do now, I had to first find self-worth. And the plus size modeling industry, though very unfulfilling, and eventually was not, I got out of it. But I did it for 10 years. I signed with IMG Models in New York, the biggest modeling agency in the world. I've been with Wilhelmina Models. I, modeled for Target and Bare Minerals and, all the brands. And it really helped me love myself as I was. And it sort of put me in this space because I was on Instagram at the time and I was sharing, I'd share a bikini picture or whatever. And I only would do that because who I was following on social media were a bunch of other plus size models. So to me, it was normal to see these curvy women living confidently. And so I started sharing that, not realizing that like the majority of people weren't following other plus size models. So I was the only sort of like curvier girl that they were seeing in their newsfeed celebrating her body. And so I fell into this sort of body positive, influencer space early on, which I'm so proud of. And it was, the industry, even the modeling industry since I've gotten into it has transformed, in a beautiful way with a lot more diversity. But for me, it really helped me heal. And I became this person who was like comfortable in their body and, such a 360 from where I had once been. And so, yeah, I had this like great modeling career. I moved to New York City. I lived in the West Village. Then I went broke. Maybe we'll talk about that. And moved back to my parents' garage. But it was really cool. It was a great career. And it's not the season for me anymore, but I'm really grateful for everything that it brought me.
Yeah, it for it to bring you that sense of healing in the sense of your self-worth and recognizing that you were becoming and you were everything that you had wanted to be. Like that, did it bring the happiness in the moment? Was there doing it for a decade? Was there a chase for more? Like what led you to the going broke? And like, how did that manifest itself?
Yeah, I will tell you, I have always struggled. The modeling industry was a struggle for me because especially at the time that I was into it and that I was in it, it never felt like there was a lot that I could do to improve my career. Meaning I was booked because my shell and not really, for the most part, anything that had to do with who I was as a person. And I actually really struggled with that because I would go to casting and I was like, no, but I'm smart and I'm charismatic and I'm creative and I'm fun and I'm like all these things that I want to express, but there's no space for that in most cases. Nowadays, I think people cast a little bit more based on personality. And then you have social media where people can create more of a brand that is rooted in who they are. But at the time, I really struggled because I felt like, I was modeling, I was a small fish in the IMG pond, if that makes sense. When that agency, they have every supermodel and, whatever. And so I always just felt like I could never really keep up. And for me personally, and there's no problem with getting work done or Botox or anything. I just am I'm a very holistic person and I couldn't keep up. I couldn't keep up with all the things that I would have to do, especially as I age, to continue to be in that industry. And every time I don't know, I'm grateful I met amazing people, but it just didn't feel like the full expression of, I couldn't use who I was in the way that I really wanted to and have a voice like I really wanted to.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting point. And I see how that would have changed to now, but it's like the value only being in your physicality and not your intelligence and your kindness and your warmth and your character. What was the breaking point of getting out of modeling? I know you mentioned like going back and living in your parents' garage. We've all had those moments too, to normalize. Would that be considered, in your opinion, a rock bottom? And like what led you there?
Yeah. So when I moved to New York City, I moved from LA at the very end of 2013. And I was like about to live my Carrie Bradshaw moment. I was like, I have been, I think if you've ever had a dream of living in New York City, you got to do it. Right. And so I was living by myself for the first time. I was like, I have this potential. I feel like I'm not living at it. I want to make some changes. And at the time I found something called the Whole30, which is like a 30-day kind of clean eating thing. I was like, I'd love to do a sober January. Maybe I'll do a food thing with it on the Whole30. And I did, in January of 2014, I did the Whole30 and I, got sober. And at the end of those 30 days, I felt so dramatically different. Like it was shocking to me how different I could feel mentally, especially and emotionally, in those 30 days of changing how I was fueling my body and what I was putting in my body, that I was like, I can't ever not feel this way again. And so I ended up being sober for that entire year. And I stayed kind of doing whole eating this way that made me feel so good. And that food thing led me into moving my body more. And it led me into journaling and it led me into therapy. And I started uncovering my binge eating disorder and understanding how I use food as a drug, as an addict. I would still at this point, I had a 10,000 calorie binge one time. It's like in 20 minutes, I ate 10,000 calories. And what was very interesting is I was eating like almond butter and apples and bananas and, like healthy, quote unquote stuff. And I realized it wasn't about the food. And it was about how I was escaping my body and what I was using to go numb the same way people use alcohol or technology or sex or whatever, right? And so that got me into the Overeaters Anonymous program. And I sort of really kind of started looking at my addiction. And that, and so I just kind of got into this self-care space. And all along the way, I was sharing with people my journey and what I was uncovering. But people are seeing this transformation, especially this physical transformation. So this is this kind of interesting point is that I moved to New York City. I was about a size 14, which was like the prime at that time, the prime plus size modeling size. I lost a bunch of weight from going on this health journey. I ended up kind of around like a size 8. And at the time, that's a no man's land for models. You were either a size like 00 or you were a size 14. There's no like in between. Nowadays there is. So I lost all my jobs. Like I literally, and in modeling, you don't know you're losing all your jobs until it's been 2 months and you say, wow, I haven't worked in a while. And it's, you get paid like 90 days later or 180 days later. It's very hard to plan if you have no financial foundation. It's just very challenging. And so I thought to myself, like, well, what could I do utilizing what I've learned and what I love, what I'm passionate about? And so I started cooking the same food that I was cooking for myself. I started cooking. And I put like, does anyone want a private chef in New York City? And like major LOL prior to the words chef, using chef as a word to describe myself because I'm not a chef, but I, don't hate on my confidence. So I posted it. I had people interested because they've watched me kind of lose weight and get healthier. And so I started this company called Model Meals, and it was a meal delivery company. And I started cooking out of my apartment in New York and delivering it around the city, and like totally like successful in the sense of like, it's your first business and people are buying from you and it's exciting. Not successful in the like, revenue, expenses, profit perspective. However, I was like, this is great. So anyway, I got to the end of the year. I did a couple episodes of Chopped. I started getting into this like Food Network space. Anyway, end of the year, it was, I can't afford to live here. I have no income. Essentially, I gotta do something. And I was still struggling with food and addiction stuff at the time, or food addiction. So I was like, I'm moving home. I moved home to my parents in California, and they were redoing their house at the time. So the place that they had for me to stay was the garage. This very like small, kind of like maybe like a quarter of the size of an RV like apartment, like very, very small. Off the garage. And then I put my desk in the garage next to my mom's Toyota and like my clothing, next to the Toyota. And I moved back with my parents, and I would end up staying there for 2 years while I got my company Model Meals established there. And that company was we eventually grew that company to over $10 million. And we were acquired by a public company back in 2021. So I exited around 2022. Which I can get into if you want. But it was during that time living in my parents' garage where I was 30 years old, I think at the time, or nearly 30. And, that I developed what is like kind of the foundation of what I teach now in my self-care society community on Circle and all that, which is this thing I call the self-care checklist, because I was living in my parents' garage. I was getting my business off the ground, but I was really struggling. I had started drinking a little bit again, whatever. But I was really struggling with binge eating still. And I had no money. So like people don't even realize that if you binge eat, like you go to the grocery store and spend $100 every time you do that. And you probably do that almost every day or multiple times a day. I don't realize this is like a money conversation too. And I was binge eating thousands and thousands of calories to go numb and tune out. That was my drug. And I just asked myself, I said, what would it take for me to get to the end of the day and not binge? Like, what's my equation? And I made a little checklist. I was like, I'm just going to see if like I do these 4 things. I journal, I eat a certain way, I meditate, and I exercise, right? So I'm just going to do this. And what I realized was that this simple checklist was like this huge missing puzzle piece of actually implementing things into my life that support me. And so I did it. And I was like, wow, I didn't binge today. I did it again the next day. Check off the 4 boxes. Wow, I didn't binge today. And I realized that the simple accountability of having a self-care checklist was insanely powerful for me. And so that checklist started evolving, and I would write my gratitude on that, and I would have affirmations, and I would write manifestation. Alexa, I'm sitting in my parents' garage. I would say, like, my mom's Toyota is behind me. I'm in the garage and in my like makeshift desk area. And I'm like, I am rich. Money flows to me faster than I can keep track of. Danika is a New York Times bestselling author and sold out Madison Square Garden, whatever. And I'm writing all this stuff when like the physical world around me says the opposite. You know what I mean? Like it's the reality is different. But one day after the next, as I stayed accountable to shifting my mindset and exercising my mindset and my mental health in the same way I might exercise my physical body every day, I watched my life transform. And as I said, my company grew and skyrocketed. I moved out. I met the love of my life. I paid off all of my debt, over 100K in debt. All these things. And so then I started teaching the self-care checklist to others. And eventually there was such a demand. We did a couple in-person events in California. There was such a demand that we decided to go on tour. And my partner was an actual chef versus me, who was just one on Instagram. He did all the food, and we did this women's tour, and we did 66 events all over the country. We got an RV, and we had a dog. It was a 200-pound English Mastiff. He came with us. And we lived in an RV, and we did 66 events all over the country over a course of 10 months called the Brunch Series. And we worked with women, and we helped them go after their dreams. We identify what it is that lights them up, cultivate confidence, connect with other growth-minded people. I mean, it was like it's so beautiful. We hosted them in people's homes, like people volunteered their home, and we would bring all the equipment, and, we'd have 50 women per event. So it was pretty remarkable. And that tour was where I kind of taught all these self-care things that had really helped me as we transition. My partner is a recovering opiate addict, heroin addict, and is now sober as well, has been for a while. And we're like really passionate about self-care and health in an accessible way and living a kind of like a present and conscious life. And so, I'll pause there because I don't know even what the original question was, but anyway, so it just took us into this path. And I was running my meal delivery company all along the way too. But this tour is what really set the foundation. I guess this is kind of where to wrap that up. The Brunch Series tours made me realize that these one-off events were really powerful, and people needed a way to consistently do this work on a daily basis, the same way you exercise your body and you repeat the same stuff over and over to get stronger every day. We have to do that with our mindset. And that is essentially how Self-Care Society was born.
I love this. I love your story so much. You make me and people feel like anything is possible, and it is. And most of it starts mentally. Most of it starts with our beliefs and what we say to ourselves and how we speak to ourselves and what we think is possible. And it's amazing to see what you've built when you got, in your desk, your parents' garage, and you started writing down those manifestations. I think that's so beautiful because you've manifested that life now. I want to look at you, moving out, building model meals, getting it to a place where it's scaled. Let's talk through like how you built model meals to a place where, did you know you wanted to sell? Was that your forever business? Like, where was your mindset at when you started scaling?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I knew I wasn't there to build a mom and pop local meal delivery service. Like, I always knew I wanted to be national. I always knew I wanted it to be big. I wasn't a seasoned enough entrepreneur to even be having a conversation around selling like an exit strategy. Like I didn't even know it, like that wasn't even something I thought about, right? Like in your first business, you're just like, wow, I have a business. People are buying something from me. And so I don't think at that stage I really knew, but we got to the point, man, I wouldn't change the experience for the world. However, it's a tough industry. There's a reason that I now have a digital product and zero overhead. Like so beautifully supported by all that Circle offers. But it was expensive. And so we operated in California from 2015 until 2022. And we sort of just gradually grew. Like we kind of started in Southern California and LA and Orange County, San Diego. And then we kind of expanded into like the whole state. And then we opened 3 states. When we got acquired, we were able to go national. But no, we just got to a point where the expenses of, we were just like, we were making a lot of money, but we were spending a lot of money to operate, because think about the cost of, it's organic. Like we were buying the highest quality stuff because that was what we were about and it mattered. But then you take that and then you think about shipping a very heavy box with ice packs overnight, because it's not frozen. So there's overnight, right, shipping, and it's based on weight. It's just very, very challenging to do with the quality we had, and to not beyond a local market, and I could do a full podcast about what I learned and whatever, but we got to the point where it was expensive and we were like, what's next for this? Are we going to sell? Are we going to merge? Are we going to just like try to unravel and close? Like we just kind of weren't really sure what we wanted to do. But I think both my partner and I were ready for like what was next. Because this isn't like a story where like we were doing, we got to like 10 million in revenue, but we weren't barely paying ourselves. It was like there wasn't that much money left. So this would be a different conversation if I was bringing in $1 million a year for myself, and like it wasn't that. And so anyway, randomly we got an email from a guy who was a CEO of a public company, and he reached out and they were like, hey, he had built and sold another meal delivery company a while back, and his perspective was all about the benefits of kind of systems of scale in this industry, rolling up a bunch of smaller businesses under one umbrella. And we agreed with him, and he was smart, and he was like, that's really the only way to have an exit strategy. So we ended up meeting with him, liked him, and decided that it was the best fit for our company. So I stayed on as the CMO of the public company, and CEO of Model Meals, and ran that for a while until it just got and then COVID happened and the shipping was so expensive and everything got so much more expensive. We couldn't do it anymore. It was too hard. And there's so many more players in the game. So, anyway, I exited around 2022. It was mostly a stock acquisition, to be honest with you. I walked away with very, very little. But I still wouldn't change it for the world. I get to bring kind of that with me as I do new things,
Yeah. Something that I want to highlight so far is your ability to make decisions and your ability to know yourself and make decisions rather quickly. Like you, at least from my perception so far, it doesn't sound like you think of something and then you sit on it for 8 months and then you do it. Walk me through like how you know when it's time to make a decision and how long that process is for, like, let's say, I'm sure making the decision to move from New York to LA, had its own time period versus the decision to exit, as CMO and, start another company.
Yeah. I am very compulsive, and I'm just like an entrepreneur by nature and a forward thinker by nature, in the sense that like I'm like, I need something new and exciting and creative. I've noticed like every 5 years is really like my rhythm of like, I'm ready to start a new business every 5 years, which means I need to really work on figuring out how to get things profitable and passed off. Doesn't mean I need to close a business, but it needs to be passed off so I can take, or at the very least taking that creativeness into my business in new ways to keep me like really stimulated. So to be honest with you, I don't think they're well thought out at all. My assistant like could kill me. She's always, like I'm like a very much like do it and ask for forgiveness later, like I'm not, and I've been fortunate to, I haven't got myself in too much trouble. But that's just my personality, is like, I'm just going to do it. And I've gotten better at like informing people of what I'm doing, because before it was just like, I just full speed ahead, but typically it's like, okay, this makes sense and whatever. But I'm very collaborative. I always I try my best to bring my team members into everything. And I really value their insight, and we work together just like we're all founders and, so I don't know, Alexis, I don't know. I haven't really thought about my decision-making process. I guess it's just sort of like, I guess the work I do in the sense of like a lot of journaling and inner work and the way I live my life, so I have as much mental clarity as possible. There's just a knowing and an intuition and a clarity that exists within me because I live like as authentically as I can. And so I remember back in the day when I was living based on what I thought people wanted me to be, that's when you're kind of like keeping up stories unintentionally. And you have to like almost like stress through like, what's the right answer here based on what I think people want from me, versus nowadays I live in a way like, what's the best answer based on what my heart tells me? And so it's easy. It's so much easier to live that way when you're not bullshitting, like when you're just living what's true for you and you're honest about it. So I think that's really it. It's just a clarity.
Yeah. The inner knowing, the inner intention, it's a byproduct of that. So just quick decision making, quick aligned, value-based decision making is a byproduct of knowing yourself and doing that deeper work. So let's then focus on Self-Care Society. So you leave Model Meals in 2022. When does has Self-Care Society already started? I know that you did the big tour. You realized, okay, love the tour, not necessarily scalable, right? Like, how can we do this digitally? When does Self-Care Society start? And then how is it starting to grow, I guess, in the first, let's say 12 months?
Yeah, I would say the idea of it began in 2018 at the end of the tour, when I thought I need to figure out a way to help people stay accountable to like actually implement this daily. That was the end of the tour in 2018. In 2020, early 2020, my partner and I bought a house in Las Vegas where we live now, and we moved to Las Vegas. I was still modeling. I was still running Model Meals. And we decided around, once COVID happened, probably around, I think it was around like April or March, we decided to launch Self-Care Society. It was an idea that had been brewing forever. I had been talking, my brother is my business partner, and we've been talking about it for a long time. And it just made sense, right? It was like exactly what so many people needed when they all of a sudden were at home and didn't have connection, needed support for their mental, emotional health. And let me just pause and say what Self-Care Society is, because I guess I never really did that. But we offer, you can think of it like a fitness membership for your mindset. So we offer guided community journaling classes. We have different guides who guide the classes. And it's the same way that, like I said, you should show up, and do a new workout 5 days a week. You're going to show up and do the same thing. And it's meant to help you create a great day. And the foundational belief of Self-Care Society is that a great life is really just a series of great days. So we help you create a great day. And the actual format of that class is usually like 4 to 5 journaling prompts. So for example, I teach a class on Monday morning. It's called Winning the Week. You would come, you're not visible or audible. We run all of this through Circle's live feature, which is amazing. And I would guide you. We have a little bit of kind of an inspirational, quote and whatever. Everyone's engaging live in the chat. It's awesome. But I'm really guiding you through about 5 exercises. You get a prompt and some instructions. You get an example, and then you get the time to actually do it during class. Our classes are all 30 minutes. So in 30 minutes, you do, usually about 5 exercises where you've checked in with yourself. You've organized your tasks for the day. You've made sure to take time to sort of visualize or manifest where you're going. There's a lot of goal setting. There's a lot of dreaming. There's a lot of intentionality. There's a lot of self-care, planning, like introspection. So the foundation is that you are your own best guide. You have your answers. You just aren't typically creating enough space to listen. And so we help facilitate you being your own best coach through going inward and journaling. So it's all that. So anyway, for context,
love it. I'm
that's
like,
what we do.
I need to sign up immediately.
We would love to have you. We have live and on-demand classes. And then we also do like monthly planning workshops where we reflect on the month that's closing and plan for the one ahead. It's really beautiful. And what's really cool is now that we've been running for 4 years, I get to really see these people who have shared their dreams, living these dreams. Like, it's so cool. because you hear them say it, a year ago, and then you're watching them live it out. And it's like so rare that we actually are vulnerable enough to get on and speak our dreams. And so
Right.
we do a lot of that in the community, and you get to actually see the power of this work, like in action. So,
Are there any
anyway,
specific stories that come to mind that you can share?
I mean, so many. I have like, it's so beautiful to watch. Like, and what's really cool is we have all different ages. We range from age 20 up to the 70s. And so people at all stages of their journey, one person that just popped to mind, Diana, she had two daughters. She ended up, she became an empty nester, and she ended up selling her home and getting an Airstream and traveling solo. She's single, traveling solo and meeting, like basically like I think she's starting a community for women who are like solo traveling, RV life, whatever. And I'm just watching her live this dream that she always talked about. I mean, this is just like one of many. This, Kelsey the other day came on, and she has a little, like, I think 9-month-old or so. And she just left, a long period of time. Like, she worked in management for Starbucks for, I think, like a decade or two. And she is going back to school, pursuing music therapy and like these things that she's so passionate as a single mom. Like, it's just so freaking cool to watch people do these things that they say they want to do. Right. And then of course there's
Yeah.
just, there's so much, and I can't take credit for it, but we do create the space for people um, to live life more intentionally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are beautiful stories. And I think you touched on something that is the beauty of being in it for the long haul, or at least committing for year over year, because you really do get to see people's transformation from, year 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. And you get the feedback loop closed. Like,
Mhm.
sometimes we can inspire a lot of people, or we can make change, or they make changes on their own, but we don't always necessarily get to see it. Like, we don't get to see it
Mhm.
through fruition. So it's amazing that you've gotten to experience and visually see people's transformation from the action that they've taken
Yeah.
from your community. So I know that you have a 7-day challenge, and
Mhm.
walk me through how the challenge has impacted the growth of the community, because I think
Mhm.
that a lot of founders in the tech space are wanting to start communities, but there's a lot of kind of uncertainty or even overwhelm on how to start. And I always think challenges are a really great way to get people quick wins, get people taking action. How do you structure your challenges, and how has that worked for the growth of Self Care Society?
Yeah, it's a great question. So our biggest challenge, like personal challenge or business challenge, I guess, has always been helping people to understand what it is we do. Because
Yes.
at first we were like, we offer self-care classes. People are like, are we going to take a bubble bath together on Zoom? Are we going to do our nails? Like, I don't know what that means. And so for a long time, it's like, come take self-care classes. People are like, okay, if they're adventurous, maybe they'll try it. Right. But we really struggle with that. So we really had to like narrow down how to articulate what it was that we did. And we struggled with that. And so, we use for our actual membership, we have a free trial so people can join for free. We played with pricing a lot. Currently, we're $12 a month, which I think is a really good spot for us. That's unlimited access to all of our live classes and planning workshops and community. I mean, it's an amazing deal. Um, but we still need to get people in the door to try us. And the other thing that we thought often about is like, we have this database of over 1,000 amazing classes. Like, 'cause we record all our classes. So we have all these amazing classes on all these subjects. So what I decided to do was along with Noelle, who's our amazing community manager, we have a spreadsheet. Everything's organized, and we categorize every class like based on, is this class is about dreaming, this class is about planning, this class is about overcoming fears, this class about manifestation, self-love, whatever. And I decided to put together a course from these classes based on confidence. And so our 7-day challenge is a 7-day confidence challenge. And the reason I chose confidence was because this is something that so many people struggle with. It doesn't matter if you need confidence to even get out of the bed in the day, or you need confidence to, raise $5 million for your business. Like, it doesn't matter what level you're at. Everyone can benefit from increasing their confidence. And there's so many tangible, like, ROI points on confidence and how much they benefit people. Like, I think it's something like 70% of people, if the 70% of confident individuals will go after their dreams versus, whatever. So there's so many interesting statistics. And so we had these amazing classes that were that were boosting confidence. So we decided to piece them together into a 7-day challenge, where it's 1 30-minute session each day. The challenge costs $7. And, there's the opportunity in that sort of, sales flow funnel to upgrade to a 30-day challenge for another $7. So a lot of people choose to do that. Probably about 80% of people decide to make the 7-day we market the 7-day, but they decide to make it into and do the 30-day. And it's just a variety. It's, 30 different classes and a few bonuses and that sort of stuff. So what's been really beautiful is that gives someone a taste of what a class is like us. And so if they do that and they decide, oh, okay, this is cool, this is confidence, but I really want to get access to like a variety of different concepts and categories. And I love what this is, that you see how engaged, wonderful everyone and supportive the community is. It's an easy and natural flow into Self-Care Society, or into any of our courses that we offer, that we host on the Circle platform as well. So I think it's good. It's relatively new, Alexis. We only launched it a couple months ago, our challenge.
Okay.
So, but so far it's been really powerful, and getting a lot of new people in to see what we're about, which was our biggest challenge, is like people just didn't know, what we did or how we could explain it. And, nowadays too, with all the noise out there, you're supposed to be really niche, right? And it's a little bit hard, if you're not necessarily like self-care it's a broad subject mindset where it's broad.
Right.
So getting people in the door through something a little more niche, like unlocking unshakable confidence, helps them to then kind of move into, our community space where there's a little more going on. And what's beautiful about Circle too is that they get access to a lot of our kind of shared community spaces, even if they don't have access to the full membership and the classes. They do get to engage in certain spots with a lot of the people in our community, which they're the best. Everyone will probably say this, but we really have like the best people ever.
Obviously. Also, like the topic of mindset and self-care is going to attract people that I think are kind and intentional and supportive. So I think it's amazing. And for the challenge, is that evergreen, or do you do it once a month? Is it ongoing?
So we did like a beta launch where we just launched it to our Self-Care Society members. We did that in September. And then we did our first public launch to our email list and a little bit on social media for October. And then it will just essentially be evergreen. I can see us doing pushes around certain, for new months here and there, maybe a few times a year. We have a program called New Year. That's like our big sort of like annual planning program. I've been doing that since before Self-Care Society. It's basically like a planning for the 12 months ahead. It's a really cool system. I have this spreadsheet that I created called a life sheet, and I use it for everything. And it has my goals, and I check in with myself on it every day. So I rate how I'm feeling, 0 to 5. And I have like a little self check-in and gratitude, and I track a bunch of stuff. And so you get access to, it says the All of You Year is a 5-hour course that you could do at any time you want a fresh start and you want to build like an annual plan. And so it's all, so you're looking at the year for it. So we'll do a sort of big live experience and some bonuses for that at the end of the year, because a lot of people like to do it as they go into the year, but it's built in a way now that you could do it on birthdays or transitions or anything like that. So, the way I think of it is like Self-Care Society gives you options for daily support and monthly support with our monthly planning workshops. Year gives you support, like annual support. So it kind of depends on the person and what they need. And then we have supplemental things like the confidence course, for example, that is confidence focused. And then I have a course called Implement Anything. And that's for someone who wants to now take all of these things we're doing and implement them using a project management. I use Asana. So anyway, we have a few different things and they all work together really cohesively.
Yeah, I can tell that like one feeds into another. It's almost like someone's kind of graduating to the next level, to the next level, and to the next level.
Exactly.
So you're big on like self-care / habits too, because I feel like self-care is a habit. How have you helped new community members build habits of coming into the community? Because I think that when you're starting something new, you have to almost like categorize it as like we are building a new habit. We're going to a new app. We're going to a new community. We're going to the live journal session. How do you kind of help them build those habits?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we're always evolving this. I just like redid all of our trial onboarding emails. So that's a big part of it. They get an email, or we have a 7-day trial. So they get an email every day in a 7-day trial, which kind of introduces them to the different pieces of it. So we'll encourage them on the first day to get in an RSVP for our class, our live classes. And that of course helps because there's the automatic emails from Circle that give them the reminders to show up to class. And we use the calendar feature so people can put the classes on their calendar and subscribe, so like the Circle has so many good features that help people show up. We have, there's the sort of direct message features that we can send, like, oh, something's starting soon. Someone can get a notification. We encourage them to download the app. Obviously that helps someone to show up because it's right there. It's easy to join. I do things like I go on social media and I'll give like sort of like a high level view the night before I'm teaching a class about like what the class is about. So that'll definitely get people excited into classes. And then of course, like we have the on-demand library. So the nice thing is that people, if they miss our live classes, they can access that. So we're using a lot of those different awesome features that are available to us to get people there. Mm-hmm. I think there's always things we can evolve. We have a start here video when people get to the community. A variety of spaces. One of our spaces is like a say hello. So it's where you're meant to kind of introduce yourself. And our community is amazing. Like if someone is brave enough to come and say, hey, I'm new here, just saying hello, like, like we have people are loving and supportive. I will say like the thing I challenge with is like, we're really about helping people like live their brightest, like their most beautiful real life, like in real life. And so there's this balance of like having a community space. We don't want it to be the next Instagram or Facebook. We don't want you spending a ton of time there because I want you out living your life in the world. And we want to have a beautiful space where you can connect with these like-minded people and share resources and all of that. So it's not, there was someone through Circle, I believe Noelle said to me, and they said that they were sharing tips. Maybe you're familiar with this, sharing tips on like if you have a softer community or a more spacious community. It was something along the lines of like, if you don't like it, there doesn't have to be like crazy amounts of action. We have a decent amount of action there, but you know what I mean? Because for me at this stage in my life, after burning myself out and being in the hustle culture for so long, like my goal is to have a relaxed nervous system. My goal is to have less to do, to feel spacious, easy. I have 2 little kids. I have a 2-year-old and a 9-month-old. I spend a lot of time in my organic garden. I've got 30 fruit trees and 10 organic raised beds. Like I want to chill. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
Things feel spacious and easy. And that's what we bring into a lot of our work too, because our desires in life are simply like any goal we set for ourselves is really just based on how we think we'll feel when that happens. Right. And so we emphasize a lot about like, if you're setting goals for your life, maybe you don't know what you want. Maybe you don't know what those dreams or desires are. You're new to this work. Well, you can decide, how do I want to feel? When I look 5 years in the future, how do I want to feel? And we can do so much. If you can just identify how you want to feel, we can do so much with that because there's so many easy ways to feel impactful. There's a bunch of little things you could do today, right? And it makes it all a lot more accessible. And anyway, it's really beautiful.
I love that. I'm glad that you've kind of shifted the conversation naturally towards taking care of yourself as an entrepreneur. And you kind of mentioned hustle culture as well. I know that a lot of creators, founders, entrepreneurs are listening to this episode. You've started multiple companies, had very successful careers in different industries already, which is amazing. How do you prioritize your own self-care? And what advice would you give to entrepreneurs who are battling with, they're builders and they're so passionate about what they're building that oftentimes their health and sometimes mental health is sacrificed for the greater good, quote unquote, of the vision that they're trying to build. Like it's like this double-edged sword of the most authentic version of them is building and creating something really meaningful. And at the same time, that thing that they're so passionate about ends up taking away from their mental and physical health. So how do you navigate that specifically, in the entrepreneur founder space?
Yeah. So I think the first shift you have to make is realizing that the self-care is productive, right? Is that like, if you want to make more money and you want to be more successful, then you sure as hell need to implement self-care. And I always say self-care doesn't take time. It makes time. Okay. So if you're going to spend an hour working out and taking care of yourself, you will gain it back probably tenfold in your quick decision making, which we've talked about, in your mental clarity, in your creativity, in your ability to focus and not task jump, right? In your, like I said, with decision making, you make one wrong decision that wasn't rooted in clarity and what you really wanted. It takes you a long time to clean that up. And a lot of times it costs you money. Right. And so that's what people don't realize, is that self-care doesn't take time. It makes time. And so for me, I literally, I love productivity. I don't want to be in the hustle, but I'm the same way. Like, well, I want to build and build and build, right? So the self-care is what allows me to do that with more efficiency and to do, what I want to do in a concise and effective way. And then of course there's a million other sort of like actual practical tips. I've got a treadmill under my desk. I've got a standing desk. I do that a lot. I work outside a lot. Obviously I work from home. I work out at home. I take my self-care society classes. I have these like personal self check-ins that I do. I eat very, very well. Not like restrictively, but I eat very, clean, healthy stuff. I'm sober. I've been sober now for like 5 years and most of the last decade. And I just, and then listen, when I became a mom, I just got slapped across the face. Like that is like it is just a whole nother thing, right? Because I was a self-care gal. And when you have a new baby, and not to mention 2 babies, and I'm breastfeeding and I'm up, like I think I was up maybe 13 times last night, like 13 times. And that's consistent. That's often. And you just gotta like, there's a balance of like, yes, self-care or whatever, but like also just grace. And I've just learned to be gentle with myself. Kids put things into perspective of how fast time goes. And what I will say is I'm grateful for my model meals experience, but what I will say is that I am not going to spend I'm not like every time I'm sitting at my desk working on whatever I want to work on is a trade-off for time I could be spending with my kids, and they grow so freaking fast. And so it's just a little clearer to me the value of my time and what I'm willing to exchange for it. And that's a hard battle, I think, as parents to like, is just like, we do have to trade things off, right? Most people have to get up and go to a job and drop their kid off at daycare, so I have it freaking awesome. Don't get me wrong, but it does make things very clear. You have to be more time efficient. I'm constantly interrupted. It's a hard season. And so it's just a balance of me understanding what's possible, saying no to a lot, not overcommitting myself, and you making sure that self-care is the priority, because otherwise I can't show up for anyone or anything else.
Yeah. Thank you for being so transparent and so real. I know that that's going to help a lot of people as they navigate, the feelings and the permission to give themselves of how to show up and give themselves grace in the season of life they're in. You mentioned saying no. I want to talk about boundaries really quick. I love talking about boundaries. I don't get to talk about it too much on this podcast. Maybe we should, more boundaries conversations, but how do you, and I know this goes back to your intuition, but how do you practice boundaries? How do you know when to say no, when to say yes? Yeah. Any advice or your own kind of mental model that you've built for yourself on that?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I think that my boundaries over the last few years have just been woven into my lifestyle, in the sense that they don't really they're not even conscious boundaries anymore. They just exist. And I mean that in like the best way, where I just have set my life up in a way that it's innate for me to, I don't think twice about saying yes or no. I'm just honest. Like if I've got too much going on or whatever it is, I struggle a lot with boundaries with my kids, right? Like I want to spend time with them, but they barge into my office I have to lock my door when I do a podcast because it's like, and so I don't know, like I was the first thing that came to mind when you asked that was like, I look back when I never really finished answering this, but when Self-Care Society started in 2020, but modeling didn't really end until 2022, and neither did Model Mules. And I had my first child in 2022. So there was this period of time where I was running Danika Brysha Inc., which I was actually doing a whole lot of other stuff in Danika Brysha Inc., but sort of in the influencer speaking, personal development phase. I was running Self-Care Society. I was running Model Meals, and I had a newborn, nursing. And like my world was rocked, and I just got so burnt out. I remember like the day that it was like, we don't have enough money. I'm like, is now my time? Should I step away from Model Meals? I'm like, yeah. So it was that day, and I went in my calendar and I had like so many repeating meetings, like every week, because I was the CMO of a company. I'm managing a bunch of people, a public company, and I was CEO of another, like, it was just so crazy. And I removed the meetings from my calendar, and I looked at this like white space, and I was like, granted, at the time I was still modeling and running Self-Care Society and had a baby, but even just pulling the Model Meals piece out of, and it was just like amazing. And so I think that when you feel what it feels like, or you experience a contrast, right? So I got to experience the contrast going from that chaotic, like overscheduled, never time to breathe, to a little bit of white space. I have this practice of saying thank you for the contrast, because it shows me where I want to go. And I use this usually in the backwards direction, where say I'm sick or something. I say, thank you for the contrast. I'm so reminded to feel grateful for all of the days that I feel healthy, right? Mm-hmm. Thank you for the contrast. And that's been such a gift to me. And so, boundaries, I think you just had learned so gradually. But the reason that I implemented them, and the reason that it's like almost like a non-issue, is because I do this self-care work every day. And I say to myself, how are you feeling? Really? What do you need today? And I actually pause and I set things up. And I mean, don't get me started on Asana and task management, because I am I'm obsessed with it. And I use my Asana for, and Asana is just a project management tool. And, there's a bunch of different ones out there. But what's so interesting, and this is what I teach in my Implement Anything course, is like, I use Asana for not just like meetings, but I use Asana for emptying the dishwasher, planting fall seedlings, my kids' naps, working out, making sure I eat protein after my workout, taking white space, putting my bare feet in the grass, getting sunshine in my eyes in the morning, right? And so these are all micro wins. And lasting change comes from empowerment, not shame. And so I set myself up to feel empowered by these mini wins all day, every day. And a lot of those are self-care elements. And so the self-care stuff's woven into the daily responsibilities of my life with the same level of importance as a podcast interview, right? And so it just naturally, I figured out the equation, because I ask myself all the time, and I'm constantly checking in with myself through Self-Care Society classes, what I need that day, that week. And I do that. And I think that's where it just feels like the boundaries they don't feel like things that I have to necessarily work with uphold or anything like that. It's just, they just get naturally executed within my day, because I'm tapping into what I need at any given moment.
Yeah. I love the way your brain works. I love it. I'm like, copy, paste. I love hearing the way that using task management, project management, and viewing, having a clean space, putting your kids down for a nap, putting your feet in grass, like, it's self-care, but the brain also recognizes like, we're doing things, we're taking action, and how that builds so much confidence and so much empowerment. I have loved this conversation and just love everything that you've built and the way that you've built it and the energy that you bring to your mission. I'm curious, is there anything in the next 6 to 12 months that you're really excited about, that you're building, something that you're working towards that you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah. So for context, last year, I had a baby due on Christmas, and my big time of year, personal development in general, right, is December, January. Like, that is the biggest time. Of course, this freaking baby is due on Christmas. She ended up coming on the 30th. So I did get my tax write-off, December 30th. So just a couple days before the new year. But we built U Year last year in a way. So we used to do like a unique program every year, and I would guide all these workshops and everything. We built U Year in a way last year that we changed it, and it's called U Year Anytime, as I was mentioned. And so it's pre-recorded. You can do it over and over again. You get lifetime access when you do it. And so we're planning, I'm really excited about what we're planning for this year. So this will take place mostly in late December, but all of the courses and content will be available indefinitely, other than, watching them live. But what we'll do is we will, in addition to, we'll do the year program live in community. So anyone who has access, they'll be able to get to a live viewing that we'll do over the course of 2 days. So like 2.5 hours each day on like it's like a Saturday, Sunday, the 28th and 29th of December. So right before the new year. And then we're going to have a cool new workshop, I think, that's like a 10X workshop based on that book by Grant Cardone, where I help people to 10X their goals and their dreams. So if like, it's not for everyone, right? Some people are like, I'm cool with their original dreams. But if that's your style, we're going to do that. And then we'll have an actual implementation workshop that will help the people who like to use a project management, like I was saying with Asana or whatever. We'll have an actual workshop where people get to take everything that they kind of, master plan that they created in New Year, and we'll actually together put it into a task manager so that you're taking the daily actions and repeating events, and at whatever frequency you want to do them, you literally are building out repeating like days that result in you achieving these dreams, like actually living them. So I'm really excited because those are the new elements we're adding to Year this year. And I'm not pregnant, and I'm not and my baby's like kind of old enough. So I'm like feeling good that I get to really kind of just like go all out this year. We don't know. Maybe next year I'll have to be pregnant again. So, anyway,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
I love the energy that I feel from you when you talk about it. And I'm like, I want to take this. I think anyone at any stage could apply this to where they're at in their career and their life and their health. Like, it sounds incredibly accessible, and also it sounds like transferable depending on where people are in life. So I love it. Thank you so much for your time. Where can people stay connected with you? Where can they learn more about Self-Care Society? Give us the deets.
Yeah. So Self-Care Society is just selfcaresociety.co. You can learn about things there. And then if you want the confidence course, it's confidence.selfcaresociety.co. We're at Instagram at Self-Care Society. And then I'm on Instagram personally at Danika Brysha. So just my name. And I would love to connect with anyone who resonates with what we chatted about today. Come on over. We have a free trial Self-Care Society, so you can no strings attached, try it for 7 days, and see if you like it. Go from there.
I highly recommend checking out the trial to 1, journal and make time for yourself, and 2, to see what a successful community looks like too. Like to really just see what's possible when you're building your community. I feel like Self-Care Society is an amazing model of what a successful, thriving, connective community is. So thank you so much for what you've done in the world and who you've done it for. Just thank you so much. I just love you. You're the best.
Thank you. You know what? You just brought it full circle with the modeling, right? You're like, because we're still modeling, right? And when we have a community space, like we get to be like, we're modeling in a different way. And that was, I think for me, what I was always seeking was like, let me use who I am and what's inside me, not my physical, to model something. And so I get the gift of doing that with our space, and we couldn't do that without the Circle platform. So thank you so much.
Oh, I love hearing that. I love hearing it come full circle. No pun intended.
Oh
my gosh. You're the best. That was awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Wow. What an incredible episode from Danika. I don't know about you, but I left feeling so inspired and ready to take everything I've learned in life and help other people, just like Danika has. Speaking of, I had the opportunity to sit down with Ashley Althoff. She is a member of the Self-Care Society, and she has been following Danika's journey since 2017 and has been with her as Danika's grown her business. And now she is a member of Self-Care Society. And we got to talk about how being a part of the community has truly transformed Ashley's life, how she views herself, how she views her worthiness, the space that she takes up in the world. And I love this conversation with her. It's such a testament to the role that community can play in someone's growth and transformation. All right, with that, let's hear from Ashley.
Hello, Ashley. I'm so excited to hear your story. Welcome to The Making Of.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So I know that you are in Self-Care Society. Can you tell me, when was the first time you stumbled upon Danika and the Self-Care Society community?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I don't really actually remember how I exactly stumbled upon Danica, except I know it was in the year 2016 or 17, and she was on Instagram. So I found her on Instagram, but I can't remember, like how I came across her account. But I have a feeling I had to do something with Whole30 because I was kind of looking into health things at that point and just how I can kind of get more energy and stuff. So I think it was through Instagram. And through that, I followed her journey where she has now started Self-Care Society.
It's amazing how, and she actually talks about how she did Whole30 in our interview. And it's amazing how when you share things that people connect with, like you have followed her now for 7 years. And so it's amazing how one thing that you connect with, you're now inside of her community. So when she launched Self-Care Society, how did you know that it was like exactly what you needed? Like when did you join and how did that happen?
Yeah. So I think just like I don't know, there's something about her that I just am something that just very much inspires me. Like I just think you have people you just click with and resonate with, and they have a certain light to them that you need in your life, and you're just naturally attracted to them. And I think my whatever it is just knew that I needed her at that time. And so I just kept following her Instagram, and she still is wonderful at posting on her stories. So that's like, I just kind of like followed her day to day on her stories. And so that led me to, honestly, like she had a few one-on-one things that she would have maybe like once a year. And I would try to join in on whatever I could. I'm like, any way that I get to talk to her live or see her talk live besides on her stories is so cool. And then I was just kind of secretly like, I hope someday she does classes or like one-on-one workshops, because I would just love to have classes with her. I'm not even kidding. I like hoped that for her.
You manifested it.
Yes. Yeah. And then Derek, like, I can't remember if it was right before COVID or during COVID, she started Self-Care Society, not quite through a platform yet, just through Zoom. And she was doing like, kind of one-off classes, and you just paid individually. And I think she just did them once a week, but I just like soaked that up in any way that I could. And so basically, yes, I had been following her through Instagram, and through that, I just knew what she was up to. I sound like a stalker, but I knew what she was up to all the time. She's very good at sharing what she was doing. And then, then I knew, obviously that I knew she was starting those classes. And then it went on to start the platform, which was super exciting. And I feel like she's had this awesome following of women and men that have followed along with her and kind of have the same story that I do.
Yeah. And not stalkerish at all. We all have people that we draw inspiration from, that are motivational to us, that we feel a deep connection. We almost feel like kindred spirits, even if we have never met in real life. And so I think that's a key part of building a community. And so now in Self-Care Society, how has that been transformational for you? Like what have been aspects of it that have really unlocked different, parts of yourself that you're able to maybe live life differently because of it?
Yeah. So I think just there's an accountability about doing things kind of more in like a habitual way, and that was another great thing that I learned from her is like, don't overwhelm yourself with trying to change your life in one day, but like just incorporate a few small things every day that make you feel good. And eventually you'll fill up your whole day with goodness, and then you just feel good most of the time. So that was kind of her reason for starting Self-Care Society and being in people's lives more often, because she saw the impact it made for her because of her personal story. And so it's just been the same thing for me. It's been like, when you hang out with these amazing women and you listen to her different topics weekly or daily, then it just starts to sink in deeper. And I think even though it's an online presence, it's just as impactful as if you were meeting somebody face to face and in person. It feels like a good friend after a while, especially when you keep that accountability up. And so it's just like you just start soaking in that goodness over time. And through her, I've learned about Whole30 and like more clean eating. That's been a huge thing. And I know she's kind of transitioned over now to like just more intuitive eating. And I've done the same thing. I feel like we still kind of follow each other on that journey, which is really cool. Also, just I think in general, what I learned from her and what has helped having her classes over time is like getting over the feeling of unworthiness that I think of. I mean, I don't know, but I just want to say I think a lot of women feel, especially like we feel like we need to do a certain thing or be a certain way before we are worthy of even just like being, I don't know, I don't even know what we're trying to be, but we don't have to do anything. We just have to be us and we are already worthy. And that was her thing too. I mean, she technically is a plus size model, which I think is so silly because I don't know, I wish that wasn't even a thing, but I remember that was one thing that really stood out to me when I first came across her is I'm like, she's so happy and confident, but she's technically plus size and I'm plus size. So that must be that must be a thing for me to be able to get to, And so that was one thing that was very important to me. And then after a while, since I've taken her classes consistently, I'm like, oh, there's really no secret hump you have to get over. You just love yourself and you already are capable of doing that. You just have to open yourself to it. And it's just, kind of hard to explain, but it's just helped with the accountability of like, okay, Ashley, you're just fine the way you are. And actually, you're amazing the way you are. And we all are. And the best thing you can do is love yourself, because when you do that, then you spread that to other people and you inspire other women to be themselves too. So yeah, definitely the whole eating, keeping it consistent, the habits, and then just feeling worthy of anything. I mean, just being, it's like, just be you and you can do that. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. You articulated that so beautifully. I resonate with your story as well as the deep need to be productive and to prove ourselves all the time. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I can your energy and your light is very similar to hers, like when she's talking.
Aw.
Yeah, it's so amazing to hear how much she's impacted you because I see that same like self-compassion and empathy in you and your story and how you talk about yourself and talk about your journey. And yeah, it's truly beautiful. So thank you for being willing to share. I'm curious if you could say one thing to Danica, what would it be?
I think it's the main thing is just thank you. And I am super grateful for Danica because I would not have, I mean, I know it's always in you technically, but you need that light source sometimes to get it out of you. So thanks for being the light that I needed to just have the confidence to do the things that I do in my life now that I feel like I wouldn't have had the confidence for otherwise.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Ashley. You have a beautiful story, and thank you for sharing some of your light with us today.
Yeah. Thank you.